Alright, good evening, everybody. This is a test I'm doing over on YouTube to see how it comes over. This is a new project I've been working on. Didn't want to really unveil it tonight, but unfortunately, something got me really pissed off. And that's, once again, the so called quote unquote journalist, Fred Grimm of the Sun Sentinel. Once again, out there creating another false narrative. So there's other issues I want to address on the gray area, but we're gonna take a look at that one first. Okay, this is what he wrote tonight. Dog racing is on its ignominious final lap, thanks to Florida voters. 69%. Blah 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 blah. Not exactly a photo finish. Clearly, Floridians were disgusted by deaths, doping, and cruelty suffered by greyhounds just to sustain an anachronistic, money-losing, sparsely attended parimutuel. Hardly more than a poor excuse to operate racinos in poker rooms. Well, let me tell you, Mr. Grimm, you're a sorry excuse. You're not even a journalist, okay? Because journalists don't take their vile and disgust for something and write falsehoods. Floridians weren't disgusted by the deaths. Floridians were duped by Grade 2K and Humane Society of the United States in about $3 million. The deaths are there. Okay, about 80 dogs die, 40, maybe half of that total every year on a track, are due to a racing injury. So 40. So take 365 days a year, 40 deaths attributed to racing, and I can guarantee you, unless you're on some effed up kind of math, that's not one every 3 days. And if you would actually bother to dig a little bit deeper, like the rest of us have, and we're not even journalists, but if you dig a little deeper, you'll find out that the injury and death rate for a greyhound that goes home with an adopter is anywhere between 2 to 3 times that number. So technically, a racing greyhound is safer in the confines of the kennel and the track than going home with an adopter. And I would have to think that if someone brought home an AKC greyhound, that the injury statistics would be the same. Now let's get on to doping. Another false narrative, basically defamatory, by saying doping is, you are accusing the industry of committing felonies, when in fact we know that 2 judges, Judge Stevenson and Judge Early, I believe, in the administrative courts, in 2 totally different cases, basically refuted the expert testimony. And I'm not going to post it here. I've posted it 100 times. If Mr. Grimm ever watches this video, maybe if you get off your ass and maybe do a little bit of investigative journalism, to know that, again, you're making another false statement, because there was no doping involved in greyhound racing. That's just another false narrative that's been put out there by Grade 2K and the likes of Carrie Thiel, screaming that cocaine and race fixing. So there was no doping in the sport, sir. And I very loosely call you sir. And cruelty suffered by greyhounds. Now, what exactly is a cruelty? Cruelty in this state of Florida, at least for the 27 years I've lived here, 26, 27 years, is a felony by Florida statutes. And if one goes down back to the CRC meeting, and again, I'm not going to post all this crap. I've posted it thousands and thousands of times. It's up to Mr. Grimm to get off his ass and actually do something. And I did write a rebuttal to the Sun Sentinel pointing out Mr. Grimm's false narrative that he's saying here. So let's go back to cruelty. There's 67 counties in the state of Florida. At the CRC meeting, not one cruelty report from any of those 67 counties, be it the attorney for that county or the sheriff's office for that county, during the CRC meeting, there was not one report of animal cruelty. And basically, we'll get into the DBPR, who also inspects them on a surprise basis. I don't know, many times during the course of a month. And we all know there's a lot of people in the DBPR that are anti-racing. So if those slanted people can't find cruelty, and I didn't find any recent administrative cases, and don't get me wrong, nobody's whitewashing the industry saying that it doesn't happen, but it's a small percentage. Let's call it maybe there's 5% bad apples, 6-7% bad apples in this industry. I don't know. I'm not in the industry, but I'm going by what I found. I've been a financial advisor for 30 years. I think I know how to research stuff, and I think I know how to get down to the brass tacks. I know how to get down to the brass tacks of a financial statement. I can get down to the brass tacks of bullshit put out by animal terrorists. And I'm no longer calling them activists because they are terrorists. They are purely animal terrorists. And it's idiots like Mr. Grimm here that, he's a poor excuse for a journalist because he doesn't do any vetting of any of his stories. And I'm hoping to God that the attorneys over at Overturn 13 will call some of these journalists who put out these false narratives during and before 13. And this article is going to be forwarded to him as well. Just another example of how these guys talk and they have no idea. So it goes on to say the ballot, and I'm scrolling through the ballot summary of Amendment 13, red phases out commercial dog racing in connection with wagering. So now he's trying to say that, trying to do the horse racing thing. So obviously this guy doesn't like any kind of working animal sports. Okay, we get it, Fred. We get it. You've been in Palm Beach for God knows how long, or wherever the hell you live, Fort Lauderdale, whatever. You've been a journalist. Well, maybe back in the day you were a good journalist, but you know what, buddy? Things have passed you by. Basically it seems like digging for the truth of a story has passed you by. He also goes on to talk about the subsidization. Basically, we all know that the card rooms kick in a little bit for the purses, and that was an agreement made a long time ago. Freddie boy, probably long before you were kicking around your beat in Fort Lauderdale. Whereas, in order to get the card rooms said, "Hey, give us our card rooms," and the dogmen said, "Well, you know what? They're getting the card rooms because of the dogs," and so a gentleman's agreement was made. The card rooms would never go after the dogs, but basically a few of them underhandedly came around and stabbed the dog people in the back through all this. I'm not even going to dignify the comment from Christine Dorchak because she's been proven time and time again to be a liar. Well, let's comment once. Here's her quote. "Rather than welcome fundamental change, dog racers attack critics and covered up problems." That's not true. That's not true. When it came down to the Smith-Rader Greyhound Protection Act versus the Gates-sponsored joke, and you can see the two compared side by side if you go to the old Committee to Support Greyhounds website. If you go to supportgreyhounds.org/safety, SAFETY.html, you'll see the two bills side by side. On the left hand is the Gates bill, which is about a fourth of the size of the Smith-Rader bill. And basically the Smith-Rader bill gobbled up and was almost word for word what the Gates bill did, but only they went further into track safety. And of course, because that would cut down on the number of deaths, Grey 2K and their minions and lobbyists opposed it, because if you cut down on the Greyhound deaths, then they have nothing to get their donations on. So there we go. He goes on here to talk about horse doping. The only other argument I want to bring up here is that basically he basically tried to say that the state loses money on regulating racing. We all know that the state does not lose money on regulating dog racing because we saw it in the CRC transcript in the CRC meeting where Carlos Baruf actually called the secretary of the DBPR and asked straight out. And the secretary told him, no, we make more than it costs to regulate the sport of greyhound racing. So that's another lie by Mr. Grimm. And like I said, the other lie before that, the cruelty. We had Commissioner Schifino, if you all remember correctly. Commissioner Schifino, hold on one second. And I don't normally do this, but I'm going to let you into the studio, man cave, whatever you want to call it. Commissioner Schifino said to Tom Lee, late at night, I believe it was at the St. Pete meeting, where he said, Tom, I understand your passion for this, but I don't understand. What I didn't see is, as far as the cruelty goes, and this is a quote, Commissioner Schifino said, I saw, quote, no data, no statistics, unquote. There was another commissioner also that did the same thing that I did, is question why there wasn't any reports from any of the 67 Florida counties. So, once again, another false narrative. That's another popular term. We were on arbitrary a couple weeks ago, and now through the council for overturn 13, false narratives. False narratives are what the Florida people bought. Hook, line, and sinker, and doused in money from Humane Society of the United States. All right, on the gray area. Now we're going to touch, the gray area means that. It's gray areas, okay? We're going to pull no punches. I don't suggest that if you got children, that you let them listen to this, because some of this could get a little bit heated, as you know I can get. So let's turn to the other hot topic, which is racing dogs getting into the hands of anti-racing groups. And I know I stirred the pot. I started the shit. Okay, when I posted the quote from AJ, happened to pop up in one of my memories from a little bit ago. And I agree with that track that AJ said. And it's too bad that all the owners aren't on board with that. I saw one comment, I'm not going to mention names because these are people who we're all supposed to be together. We all fought together against Amendment 13. Everybody's got differing opinions. One person's opinion was that they didn't like the way that thread went off the rails because it's supposed to be about the dogs. Well, it is supposed to be about the dogs when you think about it. What is in the greyhound's best interest? These racing greyhounds that, if we can't get this thing overturned with the 3 chances we have, what happens to these dogs? It should be about the dogs. But think about it. Is putting a racing greyhound in an anti-race, either adoption group or an anti-race person, is putting these dogs in their hands. These are people that don't appreciate their past. They certainly won't go to Greyhound Data and appreciate their bloodlines. They don't appreciate the sport that they participate in, and they don't appreciate their heritage. So is giving a dog, an NGA dog, racing greyhound, retired, really in the best interest of the dog? When these people and groups don't appreciate that history. That would be like you doing a humane thing, and I'm not an animal rights person. I'm not going to equate an animal to humans, okay? But this is going to be an analogy to humans. So let's say, the goodness of your heart, you adopt an unfortunate child from overseas. Can be for anywhere. I'm not going to mention specific countries. So you're going to bring that child over, and are you going to totally erase their history? When they want to go back and find out where they came from, who they really are you going to stop them? Are you going to whitewash? Are you going to just, throw the tarp over it? I would hope not. The history, either good or bad, whatever you think, it's good or bad. It's history. It's there. It can't be changed. Everybody should be proud of their history, their heritage, no matter where you come from, be it human or animal. So I ask the question again. Is putting a dog, a NGA racer, in Anti's hands, be it an adoption group, is that really good for the dog? I would think in an emergency when there's nothing left, no other person left, but we've got 100 plus adoption agencies that are ready to take these magnificent athletes in their retirement. You don't need the anti-race faction. Okay? If this does not get overturned, do you think groups like the Support Working Animals and us here at Keep Greyhounds Racing, do you think we're not going to raise money? Do you think we're not going to raise the money that's necessary to place all these dogs with these 100 adoption groups? They're going to be strained for money. We can raise the money. We've already proven with Support Working Animals with 35 grand in 3 weeks that, number one, when people need to band together, that group, Support Working Animals, can band together and get shit done. Okay? So no greyhound is going to get left behind, and no greyhound is going to have to go to an anti-group or an anti-person. Okay? Because I personally, I will be out there, if we can't get this overturned done, I will be out there personally raising the money to give to the 100 plus good adoption agencies to get the dogs placed, fostered, whatever. And I'm sure Greyhound Nation, as they always do, will follow along. So yeah, there's no need for anti-race adoption groups to get dogs. There's no reason for anti-race people to get these dogs. There's enough other people out there that can take these dogs and give them and appreciate them for what they are. I know it's controversial, but that's my opinion. We don't need the anti-race groups. They can go rescue their dogs in China, which is another issue where I think that's been exposed as well, that scam, where they're crying about, the antis are crying that the dogs are going over there for meat, and that person who runs Candy Cane actually wrote a very well-worded statement saying that if you thought that they're going over there for meat, you're a blankhead. But then again, David Wolf at Greyhounds in Gettysburg had a sign from Candy Cane about meat, saving the dogs from the meat trade. So which one is it? Once again, it's another instance of them talking out both ends. Burping out one, farting out the other. That's all they know how to do. So, any anti-racing doesn't need. I remember a couple days after, an adoption person told me they ripped up about 10 applications because they were anti-racing. Again, those people don't need the dogs. There's no reason for them to get dogs when, there's pro-race people standing by to get these dogs, and pro-race adoption groups ready to get these dogs. And to the 100 or so agencies out there, I know you're flipping out. A lot of you don't even know about the suit, but hey, the money will be raised to help you out. Okay, we don't need antis. Don't need antis at all. I'm sorry if you're anti-racing and you're listening. If you're an anti-race adoption group, you're the lowest form of scum on this earth, because you help pass the false narrative of the animal terrorists. And like I said, yes, I'm not calling them they're not activists anymore, they're terrorists. Plain and simple. Animal terrorists. Okay. Like I said, this is something I wanted to do. I had to get off my chest, so why not put out a video, live video, the gray area. We will do these when topics come up. I've got quite a few topics that I've got a list on. Want to thank Mitch Cohen up at Sanford Orlando Kennel Club. What a great guy. What a great time I had first time at that track. Don't forget June 23rd at Palm Beach Kennel Club, poker tournament to benefit the Overturn 13 and support working animals group. I'll be out there playing poker. If you knock me out of the poker tournament, I think Palm Beach has already said they're going to put up some drink vouchers or some kind of swag. So there'll be a bounty on my head. There may be some cash involved too, out of my pocket, if you knock me out. So June 23rd at Palm Beach Kennel Club. Come out, give it a try. If you go to overturn13.org, the shirts are in. The initial order was small, so they're selling fast. Once those are gone, there will be reorders. As long as they're interested, there will be reorders. And those of you that ordered last night, they're already out in the mail as of today or tonight. Dropped them off at the post office a couple hours ago. So you can see the shirt in the background. It's got the 13 logo on both sides, so that's so everybody can see. Overturn 13. Got to keep the faith. The suit's going to get filed, and we're going to let the chips fall where they may. So, once again, don't ever mistake inaction, or don't mistake quietness for inaction. All right, that's it for the gray area. Next gray area, I think we're going to have an in-depth look at the cocaine issue. In-depth look at, the false accusations during 13 and all that kind of good stuff. But I wrote a rebuttal, and you know what? I'll get that rebuttal up and read it to you. To the Sun Sentinel. Now, I don't know if they'll publish it. I did send them a nice business picture because that's what they requested when you send in, and you had 500 words. But anyways, here's mine. Here's my rebuttal. In his May 10th, 2019 so-called article on horse dog racing, seems that any shred of fact-checking has passed Mr. Grimm by. Maybe time to call it quits, Fred. Here are the facts, since you seem to have your head in the sand and no regard for the truth. The quote-unquote doping you speak of was actually refuted in 2 court cases by 2 separate judges who ruled, and expert testimony in both cases back up the minute traces of cocaine were not from trying to dope the dogs, but from environmental contamination. But hey, why let any facts get in your way to express your opinion? Also, the scientific term environmental contamination as it relates to greyhounds is actually in Florida statutes. Maybe you can look it up. But that would again be too much trouble to actually report the truth. The contention that the state loses money regulating greyhound racing is false as well. Chairman Carlos Baruf at the CRC actually refuted the same lie by Tom Lee, as he actually called the DBPR secretary and was informed that they make more than it costs to regulate concerning greyhound racing. If you actually did some research into the CRC transcripts, you would have discovered that as well. But hey, why let a fact block your narrative? Why not report on the www.overturn13.org, which is about to file a federal lawsuit to overturn Amendment 13? Again, why let your readers have any facts? The garbage Mr. Grimm and other media members with personal vendetta against the greyhound racing have what the Overturn 13 attorney calls creating a quote-unquote false narrative. Those like Mr. Grimm, others, and especially the liars of HSUS and Grey 2K will soon be exposed when they have to try and defend the lies and quote-unquote false narratives created to lie to the public. I sure hope Grimm is one that is subpoenaed. The First Amendment gives you free speech, but not the right to lie and defame an industry of human beings who have done nothing wrong.